You're listening to Wealthy-esque. We are a community of lawyers who believe that true wealth is having control of our time. I'm Ro Thomas, and as a busy wife, mom, and big law associate, I know all too well the tension between the culture of the legal profession and pretty much everything else you want to do in life. Each week, I'm bringing you the information and tools you need to take back control of your time by reframing your mindset and managing your money to achieve lifestyle freedom. Take the first step toward regaining control of your time by downloading your free Lifestyle Freedom Starter Guide at rothomas.com/start. Hey friend, how are you? Welcome back to the show. I hope you are doing well and having an amazing day so far. So today I want to talk about a statement that we often make that seems innocent enough, but actually is pretty harmful. You ready? I can't afford it. You probably already knew that's what I was going to say because that's probably what I'm going to title the episode. But how often have you said, I can't afford it? It's almost an automatic statement when we come across something that we, perceive to be expensive, that we don't typically buy, or we're not used to spending money on, right? And for many of us, we grew up with parents saying some variation of, I can't afford it. We can't afford that. We don't have the money for that. Money doesn't grow on trees. We ain't got it, right? Whatever the statement is that your parents used. And I remember my mom told me one time, when I was little, she said something like, we don't have the money for something. And I asked her, well, why can't we go to that little machine at the bank and get more? Because I didn't understand how ATMs worked at the time. And wouldn't it be great if that was how it worked? Like if I'm just out of money, let me roll up to the magic, money machine at the bank and get some more. It would be amazing. But that's not how it works, right? The thing though with the statement, I can't afford it, is it's so ingrained in us, like we've practiced it so often that often we don't even see where it could be untrue. And it's untrue a lot of times. And that's not to say that there aren't times that we literally don't have enough money to buy certain things. So for example, I recently heard that Jay-Z, who's my favorite rapper, and Beyonce, who I think is just about perfect, they reportedly bought a $28 million car. I do not have $28 million to spend on a car or anything else, right? But there are other times when we will say we can't afford something, but we actually could afford it. Like we literally have the dollars to afford it. So for example, a lot of people would say that they couldn't afford to take up a new hobby that costs $10,000 or to invest in a course or a program or something like that that costs $10,000. But most of us are spending $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a year or more on rent or a mortgage. And I'm not saying don't pay your rent or your mortgage, right? But I'm just trying to show you that you literally can afford this hypothetical hobby or course if you wanted to. Like you could choose not to pay your rent or your mortgage and buy this thing instead. And you might even have the means aside from the money that you spend on your rent or mortgage. So, a lot of times we'll have money in savings or, something like that, but still say we can't afford it. The point is, we can afford to buy things that we say we can't afford sometimes, but we're not used to spending that amount of money on those things, or they're not a priority, or they're not as important to us as something else that we're using our money for already. So our automatic response is, well, I can't afford that. And instead of automatically going there, I want you to consider two different ways that you could look at it. So first, if you are considering something that you actually want to buy, it doesn't have to be something that costs $10,000, right? That was just an example to make my point about technically having the money to spend, but spending it on your mortgage instead. But if there's something that you want to buy and you've been telling yourself, I can't afford it, ask yourself instead, how can I afford this? You see, change is uncomfortable. And often when we're considering a change, our brains will freak out and automatically offer up all the reasons why it won't work, including I can't afford it. And so when you ask yourself, how can I afford this? You open yourself up to figuring out how to pay for it. You're in a more open space to come up with a solution, and you might think of things you never would have considered when you were thinking, I can't afford it, the end. Maybe you have stuff that you're not using that you could sell. Maybe you could take on an extra job. Maybe there's, something that you're paying for now that you don't care about as much that you can temporarily cut to save up for the thing you want. But rather than shutting yourself down with, I can't afford it, put your brain to work on figuring out how you could afford it. Second, if you decide you don't want to buy the thing, maybe you decide it's not worth the money or it's not worth the effort to figure out how you could come up with the money, right? Rather than saying, I can't afford it, try, I'm choosing not to spend my money on that. It's a slight shift, but it feels so much better to say, right? Like, I have the money, but I'm choosing not to spend it on this thing versus, oh, I can't afford that. Like, I can't afford it creates these feelings of deprivation, which sometimes lead to you falling off track with your money goals. So it's kind of like when someone's on a diet and they just deprive themselves of the foods that they love, and then after a while they just get tired of it and they throw the whole diet out the window and eat whatever they want, and then they're back right where they started, or worse. That's why I encourage you to include entertainment in your budget, by the way. Like, you don't want to feel like you're depriving yourself, feel like you can't have the things that you want. And so reframing I can't afford it as I'm choosing to spend my money on something else feels better. You're focused on what you want to spend on rather than what you're telling yourself you can't have. And so the actions that you take from that place will always be more productive. If there's something that you've thought about buying and your first thought was, well, I can't afford that, I want you to consider these two different ways of looking at it. And if you are interested in going deeper with the things we talk about here on the podcast, head on over to rothomas.com/coaching. Let's set up a call and we can talk about your specific situation. All right, so that is it for this episode. If you haven't already, please take a second, subscribe, leave a review for the show. That really helps other people find the show and get access to this information. Another way people find the show is when you share it with them. So please think of a friend or two who would benefit from this message. Go ahead and share this episode. And also come over and chill with me on social media. My favorite place to hang out is Instagram. But I also really love the community of lawyers over on LinkedIn. So for both of those platforms, if you go to like the website URL /IamRoThomas, then you'll find me. Come say hello. Love meeting new people. Okay, friends, so as we close out, I pray that you will examine whether you've been lying to yourself about things you can afford, and think about how the words I can't afford it make you feel. I pray that you will consider a slightly different perspective when you're looking at things and thinking you can't afford them. And as always, I pray that you continue to take steps to regain control of your time, build wealth, and live the life of freedom and choice you deserve. Talk to you later.